Welcome to the next generation of warfare, psychological warfare. In modern conflict, the mind is a potent weapon. Discover General Michael T. Flynn's groundbreaking guide, The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. Unlock tactics, strategies, and the mindset to navigate this cognitive battlefield that we all find ourselves in. Equip yourself against manipulation and emerge unscathed. Unleash your potential. Order now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is the AlphaWarrior Show, so welcome. Thanks for joining us. Do me a solid if you haven't done so already. Tap that heart, push on that thumb, leave a comment, and share this out. It's Operation Gladio night. It is August the 5th. Let me just double check. Yes, it is August the 5th, 2026. I got the Colonel waiting backstage with me. We're going to be talking Trump versus the MAFIA Intel. This is chapter 107. A little bit special when you think about it. But before we get there, let's get into the people that support this show. Keep it free, folks. You guys know they're one of my favorite. When we come back, we'll hopefully be commercial free.
Science proves that a healthy immune system is the body's first defense against the smallest of ailments to the most catastrophic. Coriolus versicolor is the most sought-after, all-natural supplement for both humans and pets to help boost the immune system. There are over 400 studies worldwide on its effectiveness in humans, including Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and now from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. Together, we can help reverse this terrible tide now plaguing your loved ones and give them the immune-boosting supplements that they need.
MyPillow's second annual mega sale is finally here. Get our patented premium MyPillows that adjust to your exact individual needs to give you the best sleep of your life.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
Now for the lowest price ever. Kings, $19.98. Queens, only $18.98. And Giza Dream bed sheets, the best sheets in history, for as low as $29.98. Lux Pierce 6-piece towel sets, towels that actually dry you. What a concept! Now only $39.98. And our made in the USA mattresses and mattress toppers as low as $99.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But that's not all. Order right now and we'll ship your order absolutely free.
Absolutely free. Good old Mike Lindown. If you want some good coffee, get some Blackout Coffee. When you go to Blackout Coffee, make sure you enter promo code Alpha20 to get you a 20% off. With that, folks, let me bring on the person you really want to hear from tonight, Colonel. Chapter 107. It's like 107 degrees right now where I'm at. I'm hot. And then I got these lights on. Colonel, I feel like a McDonald's chicken nugget. That's what I feel like right now. I'm so hot.
You need a fan. You sound like an old lady.
I'm hot flash. I'm like, so, you know, the last two chapters, we kind of set up a conversation. I don't know if you want to kind of recap that before we get into where we're at tonight.
So we were talking about intelligence agencies that are not thought of, not known by most people, that operate in and around this CIA adjacent in the United States. So obviously they have to have front entities in order to carry out operations in the United States for plausible deniability. And so we went through the 3I/5I one that was based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Then we went through Intertel, and Intertel was the private intelligence organization that was set up by the CIA front, Mary Carter Paint, that turned into Resorts International, that had relationships with assassins and all types of money laundering, narco trafficking, and weapons trafficking, because the people that were all around those organizations were part of this bigger picture. The Mitch Warbell, we talked about B.R. Fox. I spent today on my show talking about the catalog that B.R. Fox had produced that had all kinds of explosives in flashlights. They had trigger mechanisms on them that, and flashlights was just one of them. They had them in all kinds of things, telephone receivers, and the fact that they had all kinds of different mechanisms, altitude, barometric pressure that would set these explosives off. And so we kind of covered all of that the last couple of weeks, that these things do exist and that they are operating as basically fronts for operations inside the United States and have tentacles to the CIA, either directly with former CIA agents or indirectly where they would contract with them, like through Robert Mayhew. We mentioned him a couple of times. He was basically the guy that went out and hired Roselli and some of the mob to do hits. And so this whole thing is in its, just operating out there in the ether land. So one of the things that keeps coming up over and over, it's Whitney Webb's books talks about it in the Blackmail 2-volume series that she did. And they're very good at documenting the facts of it, but they never, that's the tactical level. They never rise to the strategic level and look at the entire picture and what are the realm of possibilities that it could all mean. They just think because you associate with these people or you talk to these people that you're tactically associated with them and basically involved in the same things. And so I wanted to start tonight and just kind of go over the totality in what you can do in 5 or 10 minutes of Donald Trump. And then I want to overlay what we learned about those entities over the past couple of weeks, and then put out a hypothesis that I personally believe is true. And I think, not that I don't discount the divine intervention. I think it's so important about the declassification that just happened today about the whole FBI, because it's all going to be relevant to this story. And it's almost like it's on purpose. And I also want to say, what number did you say this episode is?
Number 107.
And what's that? I'm just going to leave that right there.
So you knew I was smiling already. Yes.
Okay. So
real quick,
and I didn't, obviously we didn't plan that because we talked about it a couple of weeks ago and it just kind of morphed into a 3-part series. So here we are.
And here we are. Before you go, Colonel, the audience, I need your guys' help tonight. As you guys know, StreamYard's been doing some updates, so there's been some weird glitches. So every now and then, you guys can do me a solid and just drop a 5x5, especially when I bring something on the screen and take it down. That seems to be when there's issues. So I don't think we're not going to be playing any audio. So I think we should be straight. But if you guys can just help us out from time to time, just drop those 5x5. So I'm not worried that you guys are getting an echo that I don't know about. So with that, Colonel, let's continue.
Okay, so we're going to just briefly go over Donald Trump and the different places that, and the sequence of him. So, and I look at this obviously from a completely different perspective of what other people do, just because of the research that we've done. So obviously he was born into a wealthy family, right? By most accounts, he was the equivalent of a millionaire in today's evaluation. Obviously, he wasn't a millionaire at the time when he was a kid, but he had a lot of money. And his family could have afforded to send him to any private school. And he did go to a private school, up until the seventh grade. But he went to a school called Q Forest, KEW, Q, which is weird, Forest School. And that was in the area in which his family grew up. So they didn't send him off to a boarding school, which they clearly could have afforded. And I think this is a very telling thing, because if you go through all of the people that we've been through that are anybody that's been presidents, they've all went to either Xavier, Phillips Academy, the Dalton School. And if you go through those schools and look at their enrollment of the people that have been through those schools, which again, they could have clearly afforded it. The alumni of those schools are the CFR members, the pilgrims that we went through. All of those types of people go to those schools. So right from the very beginning, Donald Trump is not part of that milieu of people that are globalist, right? He stayed close to home. And then we all know that he transferred to the New York Military Academy, which was a private boarding school. And he graduated from there. And he ends up he started off at Fordham for his first 2 years and went to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Again, not Yale, not Harvard, not Columbia, where all of the people that we study on a regular basis had their tickets punched, right? So he gets into real estate with his father. And it is in the real estate business that he meets Roy Cohn. Now, Roy Cohn is a very controversial figure because he was viewed as a mob lawyer. And it's very interesting to have someone who operates in the mafia arena and has visibility, I mean, at an intimate level of the goings on of basically the entire mafia, right? And Roy Cohn is very notorious in that arena. He's the who's who of everybody. Now, you can argue one of two things. He mobbed up Donald Trump, or Donald Trump gained a lot of insight into how a mafia operates from his relationship with Roy Cohn, while he stayed clear of all the implications of the mafia goings on, right? So anybody that jumps to the conclusion that if you have a mentor that's well versed in that arena and you're not just learning about it, then I think they make the wrong conclusion, because we have on video the mafia guy saying that they tried to get Trump dirty repeatedly and they couldn't. So it tells me unequivocally that he knows how the internal workings of that mafia infrastructure works, but he didn't get into the mafia operation himself.
Just to that point, Colonel, and I think you would probably agree with me, and I'm talking beyond the scope of what movies have represented. That alone, and this is just my opinion, but I think I'm accurate, is a feat that you can't do on your own. And I'm not talking about Trump's moral or ethical character. What I'm talking about is these mafias the mafia infrastructure doesn't come out and just say, this is what you're going to do, and then you know you're blackmailed. No, it's a very strategic process that you didn't realize what you did until it's too late and the leverage is on you.
Correct.
So for him to be that aware and prepared tells me that most definitely had some instruction from Roy, but I would argue that there was probably a guiding hand through that entire process as well.
possibly, what I find the most interesting about his being especially when we get to the story about Resorts International, he could not have been that close to it without invitations to be in it. And I think that's the most, because again, he's in real estate. Construction is union. Unions are ran by the mafia. There had to be hundreds of opportunities for him to take a quick deal, take a loan from the wrong people. He never did any of that anybody has ever found. Whether it was Ray Cohn's mentorship that exposed him to that and was cautioning him at the same time, here's what they're going to do, make sure you don't do this. So I think it's much bigger than what most people understand. They just automatically go with guilty by association. And you can't, because there's never been any proven guilt or wrongdoing on behalf of Donald Trump as it relates to this. And I also found it very interesting. I've read a couple of, I've followed Roger Stone for quite a while. It was Ray Cohn that introduced Roger Stone to Donald Trump.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, Roger Stone was notorious for his allegiance to Richard Nixon. And Richard Nixon was taken out by these guys. And I think that's much more important than most people realize. Much, much more important than most people realize. Because Roger Stone has insight into the goings on of the CIA and their takedown of Richard Nixon that would have significantly aided Trump post 2015. And Roger Stone was very close to Trump in 2015 and forward. I don't think that's a coincidence.
I like Roger Stone.
Yeah, I've met him. Funny side story. We have this restaurant / food place. It's not really a restaurant because it has no indoor seating. It's called Mr. Fish. It's been there for like 70 years. It has the best fish sandwiches you'll ever eat in your entire life, along with a whole bunch of other food. And it's right downtown in a historic area. We were renovating a house nearby, and we go there for lunch a lot of times. So my husband we're sitting in our truck because they don't have indoor seating. We were sitting in our truck eating lunch, and he looks in his rearview mirror and he goes, "I think that's Roger Stone." And he was going to a very famous dentist in our hometown here. And I looked in my mirror and I'm like, "Oh my God, that's Roger Stone." And so I jumped out of the truck and I went up and introduced myself to him. I have my picture taken with him. And then you fast forward like 2 years later, and we're downtown at one of the car shows. We have a car show. We have a big celebration in our downtown square the first Friday of every month. And Brian Cates had just moved here. And so we took Brian Cates down there. We're going into one of the local restaurants, and Roger Stone walks by. And so I was able to introduce him because the same guy, his assistant, was there from before. So I pulled up my picture and I'm like, "Yeah, I've seen you before here. We've met over at Mr. Fish." And so Brian got his picture with him. It was just really cool. But yes, I love Roger Stone. So
stylish man.
Yes, he is. And I think there's a lot more to him than most people realize. And I think it goes back to this type of thing. He is someone that protects people until they burn him. He's a very loyal person. So Anyway, moving on. We know that Trump got into real estate big time. And we also know that he got into casinos with Resort International, which we'll go into a little bit more detail in a minute, in the Bahamas. And Resorts International was basically a mafia CIA front. And then he only has it for a short period of time. He does some deals in New Jersey right after they open up casinos in New Jersey, because prior to that, the only place that you could have regular casinos was in Las Vegas. And then Trump moves on and gets involved in casinos. And again, it is a very mafia heavy industry. And it is where the skimming and the CIA and the mafia and narcotics and all of that overlaps. So then we know that he got into a whole bunch of different things. He got into Hollywood. He got into an airline, Eastern Airline Shuttle. And again, the whole airline thing with civil air transport and how all of that works. And what most people don't understand, somebody like Trump does not get into these operations like, hey, I just want to buy this thing. There's so much due diligence that goes on, so much investigation that goes on prior to you getting involved in any of this stuff. And so you're looking at the entire financial status of these industries, right? There's a whole process that takes anywhere from a year, sometimes 5 years of study into how these things operate before you ever pull the trigger on a deal and make an offer. And so it appears to me that all of these things that he's getting involved in were like probing. It's like, I want to see what the inside of that looks like. And I want to see what the inside of that looks like. And I want to see what the inside of this looks like. And I think one of the most telling ones is when he gets into the Miss Universe pageants. Because what's that all about? The whole trafficking of women, the whole model industry. Again, another probing opportunity to find out how the entire inside of this works, right? So when he got down to all of that, everything, Hollywood, he's been in everything. And again, when you open a foreign entity, which his golf courses are all over, you have to do that exact same thing of the country. You have to know everything about how that country treats your taxes, what the financial is of the country, of the location. Again, another probing opportunity to go into all of these places and get. And so if you guys don't think that Donald Trump had his own intelligence capability embedded into his organization, like I've articulated, is available and is done on all of these others that we've talked about, you're crazy. And this whole thing has been operating for decades all over the world because he has golf courses everywhere. And it provides the perfect opportunity. Where did all of the Miss Universe pageants happen? He was in every one of those countries. So again, I think there's much more to this whole story than most people realize.
And just to the point you made right there too, about him having his own intelligence apparatus, just something for people to consider. When you're in the military or the government and you go through the formal training and the access to, special programs and levels of clearance, you become a nice commodity to the corporate world. And so a lot of these guys don't stay in the military because it's like, okay, I can make $80,000 a year, or I can go make $250,000 and then maybe some. Obviously, it goes out there. But here's the thing. Part of their value is people know they're going to maintain that network of people that are still back in
Correct.
the military. And this is a relationship that works both ways for those that would say, well, why would the military do that? Because the military or the government then also has somebody on the civilian side of these things. So if you get the picture I'm painting there.
Reach back capability.
Yes.
So we've documented there was associations between Donald Trump, Ray Cohn, and this broader intelligence network, and that it overlaps many of the things that we've spent the last couple of years talking about on these shows. CIA fronts, money laundering, that type of thing. And again, none of that touched Donald Trump. And so when you look at his entire career, and all of that happened without the stain of being implicated in any operation, and you bring that to 2015 when he announces he's running for president. Here's a guy, he's never been a member of the CFR. He's never been a member of the Trilateral Commission. He's never been to a Bilderberg meeting. The only other person that fits that criteria is JFK, since all of those things were created in the very beginning of the 1900s. Okay? So they've already went through one president that met that criteria. And he was so detrimental to their organization that they assassinated him. So you have the possibility of a guy in 2015 that has none of the dirt, none of the affiliations, none of the grooming schools, none of the anything, to become the president of the United States. And if you don't think that was massive panic, especially as 2016 starts, and he starts actually rising in appeal. And the more appealing he was to voters, the more panicked this apparatus got, because they have nothing on him. And now they're looking back at everything that I just presented to you. They are totally freaking out, right? Because they have ran at him from multiple different directions throughout his entire thing. He's been exposed to all of this, and they couldn't touch him. He's a deathly threat to these guys. So if you look at that, and when I was doing the research, Ray Cohn actually served as Donald Trump's attorney for an extended period of time, at least 10 years, from the early 1970s until he died in 1986. You guys may have heard of Ray Cohn because he was the chief counsel to Senator Joseph McCarthy during the whole McCarthy communist hunt era. He also represented the Genovese boss, the mafia guy, Anthony Fat Tony Salerno. He also represented multiple Gambino figures, and he basically was referred to as the New York political fixer. And Trump described Cohn's aggressive style as, and this is a direct quote, "Tell him to go to hell and fight." That sounds exactly like Donald Trump, right? So that's what he learned from Ray Cohen. Tell him to go to hell and fight. So that's what emboldened him on the whole litigation. Trump, when Ray Cohen was his attorney, was in many legal fights. Even when he lost a legal case, he would couch it as a win because he went up against the system. It's like probing the system. What can you get away with? And that, again, is exactly what we're watching right now. Ray Cohen prepared him for this onslaught of litigation that has been orchestrated against him both during his first term and his second term. And you can almost feel it once you go through Ray Cohen's background extensively, which I have. You can almost see the manifestation of him in Trump's attitude when they bring yet another lawsuit against him. He loves this. He enjoys it. He is there for the fight.
Indeed, he is. He does love it.
So, just so that you guys know, Ray Cohen was homosexual. So he was also involved in a lot of sexual blackmail operations, and he knows those from the inside out. He was part of what was referred to as at the Plaza Hotel, which, by the way, Donald Trump ends up owning later on. There was a thing called the Blue Suite, and supposedly that's where the compromising pictures of J. Edgar Hoover were taken, of him being in a very awkward position that the CIA had in their files to keep J. Edgar Hoover where they wanted him. And Ray Cohen operated in that entire environment in New York City. And we also come across Cardinal Spellman repeatedly in the whole MAFIA blackmail, because it was alleged that he was homosexual as well. And so if you go back and you read any of that history, and I've read it, it's crazy. So
he represented the Catholic Archdiocese in New York too as one of his clients.
That's Spellman.
Okay.
That he was the Archbishop in New York.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So if you guys remember from our previous show, in 1987, James Crosby died. And that's the guy that owned Resorts International. So when he died, Donald Trump acquired the controlling interest in Resorts International. He bought it for about $80 million and became the chairman. Now, again, Resorts International is a mafia casino operation that had the private intelligence of Intertel, which basically was the previous CIA front, Mary Carter Payne, turned into Resorts International. They have their own. And Intertel is basically the one that is alleged to have kidnapped Howard Hughes out of the casino in Vegas and taken him out of the country. So again, after what I just explained, Trump is not going to get into Resorts International without seeing all of the financials, investigating all of the subordinate entities, of which Intertel is one of them. And if you didn't watch Intertel segment last week, go back and watch it, because they were involved in a whole bunch of their various things. And Trump is now the chairman of Resorts International, and Intertel for a period of time is actually his private intelligence organization. And it's embedded with FBI, CIA, and all kinds of people. This to me is just unbelievable. And so he has like a mini microcosm of what he now has for the brief period of time. And again, he would have had to have done his due diligence to know how this entire thing is operating before he made the bid to buy it.
And just pure speculation, but if I'm the person that's running an operation, all the way back then, like you said, Resorts International, it's a freaking intel cesspool of agents and contractors.
Yes.
When I come across them and John Smith gets brought into the office and he knows he's cooked, he's done, because I show him on my desk, the conversation is going to go like this. I'd imagine that person's going to be like, what do you want from me? And the response is probably going to be nothing right now. But you're going to continue to do what you do. And when it's time, we'll let you know. And imagine someone that's in that network continuing to do all the riffraff that they're doing and that collection of evidence, because they're owned now. They've been leveraged. I mean, it's counter as a very popular general right now, as once said, counter infiltration.
Yeah. Yeah. How many people were left there as part of, yeah. I mean, to me, it's just, there's so many tentacles to this. And I just want to put this out there for people to understand how none of this is as it appears. And when you do not have the ability to think above the tactical level, you're going to put all of these facts out there, but you're not going to understand what they potentially mean at a strategic level. And what we try to do is always keep at the 40,000 foot look so that we can put the pieces together where they belong.
Right on. Shout out SOP Receipts, who joined the YouTube family over there. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Cool. All right. So in 1988, Donald Trump sells his controlling interest to Merv Griffin. And Donald Trump then takes part of Resorts International Holdings that was in New Jersey for his own first involvement in the New Jersey casino that's talked about. There's lots of documents out there if you want to look into that, but that's basically how he got into the New Jersey gaming, is through Resorts International, because they had subsidiaries in New Jersey. And so Donald Trump sells Resorts International, Merv Griffin, minus this piece in New Jersey that he keeps for his own portfolio. So in Whitney Webb's book, One Nation Under Blackmail, she basically paints Cone as a node in this entire operation on the nefarious side, but never looks at it again from the higher level. And so obviously this is the same network, and that's Whitney Webb's point, that Epstein was operating in, right? So she basically says that that's the part where basically Trump got compromised. But if Trump got compromised during those that time period, there would be dirt that entire network, because it's CIA adjacent, would have came out. The fact that they never produced anything on him during that period of time tells you everything. Because the CIA doesn't try to overthrow your presidency at least 4 times and have dirt on you from 20 years ago and not use it.
Yep.
That doesn't happen. So, again, that's the piece that I think most people miss. So, one other person that I want to weave into this is right before Trump bought Resorts International, the guy that we talked about last week, Robert Vesco, who is definitely CIA adjacent. Robert Vesco, for those of you who don't remember, is involved in so many nefarious things. He had bought this company, iOS, and had basically siphoned off almost $300 million from it because it was basically a money laundering operation. And no one could tell on him for doing that because the money wasn't supposed to be there to begin with. And some people believe that he was operating on behalf of the CIA, or the CIA would have taken him out a long time ago, but they basically protected him. That he eventually moves to Costa Rica. He buys a ranch. This is the ranch used in the 1980s for all of the drug trafficking in and out of Costa Rica. They have a paramilitary training camp on his ranch. So Robert Vesco tries to buy Resorts International right before Trump came in. And again, all of these adjacent people, Robert Vesco is one of the kingpins of Iran-Contra in the 80s and running all of that. And so Trump is going to have known all about that too, because he was trying to buy it when Trump bought it. So Trump would have looked into Robert Vesco. He would have seen this entire operation. It included weapons trafficking, narcotics trafficking, everything. Because he would have wanted to know who his competitor was for buying Resorts International. And, oh, by the way, Robert Vesco made multiple illegal contributions to the Richard Nixon re-election campaign, which I find very interesting given Roger Stone's affiliation with Richard Nixon. Again, overlapping narratives here, or timelines. So he hides out in the Caribbean because the SEC was going to press charges against him for the theft from iOS. Okay, and speaking of that, I also wanted to mention, because my audience has went through the MAFIA, the CIA, and George Bush, which is a book by Pete Bruton. He documents all of the stuff that was going on with Robert Vesco, the CIA, money laundering during the 1980s. And we've talked about it a couple of times on here, where the savings and loans were all basically, like, over 400 of them went out of business because they were money laundering through them and collapsing them, basically stealing them blind. And what's interesting about that is that all of that happened as a result of deregulation under the Reagan administration that opened the floodgates for them to be able to do all of that. So again, you can't separate Robert Vesco, who was getting a lot of that money from this whole savings and loan debacle and everything. That all follows Robert Vesco too. So we're watching the decades of the late 70s, 80s, 90s, where Trump is in the orbit of all of this stuff that we've talked about, adjacent to it, watching it happen. And that's the piece that Trump is not a normal person, right? He lived through the 80s as a business, as an international businessman. And he is not going to not know about everything that I just said. He's not going to not know about all of the books that documented all of this stuff. His degree is in economics from Wharton. He knows all of this stuff. He didn't decide to run for president not knowing how contaminated all of this is. So if you go back and you look,
also, I think he ran for president because he knew exactly.
That's the argument that I would make. Mm-hmm. And that, well, let's say that. So now you look at, we're in 2015, and you have Crossfire Hurricane and the Mueller probe. You have the special counsel, John Durham, in doing his investigation. You have the FBI opening this investigation with, one of the things we've talked about so much on this is the CIA does not collect intelligence. They make intelligence up, right? And then they feed that intelligence to the FBI, to the National Security Council, to the State Department, to justify decisions that this collective wants to have happen. They do not collect intelligence. They create intelligence. And so all of that stuff is going on in the lead up to him taking office in 2017. So, and of course, we were talking about the stuff that just got released too, which is just more kindling on the fire. So, who did we have involved in Crossfire Hurricane? Well, of course, we had John Brennan running the CIA. You had the entire National Security Council involved. You had the White House involved. All of these people, you had the FBI involved. And we learned a long time ago that the FBI has people embedded in it that are really CIA. They're sheep dipped into the FBI. So that gets followed up almost immediately, when none of that works, with the Ukrainian phone call to justify the impeachment. And then you have, when that doesn't work, that's 2019. When that doesn't work and they go through the whole impeachment thing, that's a dud. We roll right into COVID, which happened at the end of 2019. So that's another attempted coup, from the perspective that COVID was released when it was released. It was created by nefarious people inside the United States. We know that Fauci made repeated trips to the CIA. We know that USAID funded a lot of the apparatuses that were involved during COVID. So I can chalk that up from my analysis that the whole COVID operation was part of the CIA. It was another attempted coup on the Trump administration to interfere with the 2020 election and change everything about that election. Now, if you go back and look at any of the stuff we've covered over the last couple of years, how many elections has the CIA interfered with all over the world in various different ways?
Most of them.
Most of them. And again, if you don't think that happens here, you're crazy. They've interfered in our elections repeatedly. And so, as a matter of fact, I would say there's not an entity on earth that's interfered with more elections other than maybe MI6. But I don't think there's anybody that's interfered in more elections than the CIA. And yes, Mossad has been involved in election interference, but never to the extent that the CIA has. And we've proven that repeatedly through my work, what we've presented here on the show, election after election after election. And when they cannot keep the person out of the to include killing senators, by the way, they killed RFK as soon as he basically clinched the Democratic nomination in 1968. So when they're willing to kill somebody to make sure that somebody doesn't get into political office, you have to understand there's literally nothing off the table for them. They have no regard for humanity. They overthrew the Congo and over 1 million people died as a result of that. They interfered and then overthrew the government in Cambodia and created the Khmer Rouge, actually trained them, by the way, and well over 1 million people died there. They literally have no regard for life whatsoever. So would they unleash COVID and then mandate a vaccine and millions of people die horrific deaths in order to ensure that Trump is kept out of the White House, 1,000% they would do it. They have done it. They have done it repeatedly. By my math, over 10 million people have died as a result of CIA's interference in elections and subsequent military or CIA coups installing military dictatorships that then turn around and kill their own people. So yes, in fact, they would do that. So I would submit to you that 2020 was a coup. COVID was part of that coup. And all of the people that died as a result of the open borders and the COVID vaccine mandate was a result of a CIA coup. And even that number, and everybody that died in the 4 years from the invasion of illegal aliens killing Americans on American soil, pales in comparison to places like the Congo and Cambodia in the number of deaths that have been wrought all over the world as a result of operations the CIA has performed.
I wouldn't disagree with you.
So now, what has happened when you look at all of this stuff from Trump's second term? So if you go back and you look at everything that we talked about, his exposure to that entire network in the 80s and all of the Robert Vesco's, the narco trafficking, all of that stuff, the money laundering. So he's had exposure, the money laundering the mafia did that Ray Cohn would know all about, how the mafia runs. The cartels are basically a CIA mafia for their narcotics networks. There's not even really a thing called cartels. It's just another form of mafia that's related specifically to narco trafficking. They're mafias by any sense of the imagination. They have their hit squads, everything. They do their wet works. Everything about them is a mafia. I think purposely, and this is this language thing again, they came up with the word cartel basically to make people think it's something different than basically just your everyday mafia. It's your everyday mafia. Their specialty is narcotics and weapons.
And now you get to do different federal programs.
Huh?
And now you get to fund different federal programs.
But I would argue that if you took the mafia infrastructure in the United States that we know about with moving weapons around to their hitmen, their control of the narcotics networks on the interior of the United States, and you overlaid that mechanism in Colombia, they're going to look exactly the same. They're going to operate exactly the same. It's just a specialized mafia that concentrates on the movement of narcotics. Now, obviously, the mafia in the United States, they not only had a racket in narcotics, they had a whole lot of other rackets, right? So they're like the dad, and these guys are like a specific mafia related just to narcotics. But if you go to Colombia, specifically Colombia, and you look at the same guys that are moving narcotics, they're moving all kinds of other black market stuff too. They are a mafia.
If you look at when Trump was blowing up those cartel narco boats, that affected weapons trafficking and that affected human trafficking. That should tell you something.
Yes. But the mafia was involved in all that too, because they ran all the houses of prostitution. You didn't have in New York City a prostitution ring if you weren't paying kickbacks to the mafia. They didn't allow you to operate the streets. Same thing in Chicago, same thing in New Orleans. And that same shit happens in all of these other countries that are primarily based on narcotics. It's a mafia, people.
You know what the crazy thing is do you know what they call that money? It's sad. They call it a tax.
Yeah.
And it's so when you think about what we pay to the government,
Yes.
that's the same thing that the mafias and the cartels call
Why
the
do
money
you
they're getting.
think that I make a post at least once a day calling the government the mafia? At least once a day. It is a mafia. We are being extorted. They are money laundering our money.
Mm-hmm.
They are running drugs. They are running weapons. Our government is a mafia. There, I said it again. It's a big mafia. So, and I also call it a kabuki theater. So, if you look at his second term and you compare it to everything that we just said, what's he hitting? He is hitting every single black market operation. He is hitting the narcotics. He's hitting weapons trafficking. As you pointed out, that goes along with human trafficking. But inside America, he's hitting all of those things too. They have made major busts of people that are trafficking weapons inside the United States. They've made massive busts on internal narcotics trafficking, and they've made massive busts on money laundering, not just in the United States, but all over, to include the one whole show we did on the, and again, I can't ever remember his name, the DEA guy that had just retired from the DEA, supposedly doing money laundering investigations that were caught money laundering for the narcotics networks with his buddy Robert Sensei, whose name I will never forget, that had already served time for money laundering during the 1980s, which we just talked about, right? For narcotic sales as part of Iran-Contra. So he's hitting all of this stuff. He hit Venezuela to get rid of the covert sale of oil. He hit Iran to get rid of the covert sale of oil. So step by step, if you were exposed to this entire operation for the last 40 years, which he certainly was, intimately aware of all of it, you would have a plan when you walked into the White House in 2025 to take it all down. And I would argue that that is exactly what is happening right now.
I would not disagree with you. And I would just go back to all the way to the beginning of the conversation you had right now. I think that this takedown was probably set into motion way back then. I think whether you subscribe to these covert operations or not, I think there was probably a potential attempt to take down this deep state apparatus with JFK, the only one that matches the outline of what we see in Trump now.
Correct.
And I think they miscalculated how infiltrated and how rooted the deep state was in everything, from our government to our military to just everything. And they saw the cost of that. It ended the life of JFK. And I think they spent the time after that, and again, this is just my theory, they spent the time since then saying, we only got one more shot at this. We're not going to make that same mistake this time. And we're seeing the fruits unfold now of all that.
So I want people to understand how important what you just said is. The understanding of that Trump would have gained from hanging out with Ray Cohn and the exposure of how the mafia works from the inside, and the fact that they have wet works, that they do assassinations, they do hits, that they are so extensive all over the world that his exposure in Resorts International, the knowledge that they run their own intelligence agencies filled with former CIA agents and FBI. So both of those entities are completely contaminated. The knowledge that the DOJ is implicated in all of it, based on, like we were talking today in the book that we're doing right now called Spooks, how the DOJ would indict somebody to keep them out of testifying in front of Congress. And then as soon as the congressional investigation was over, they would drop the charges. Known tactic that they use. So Trump knew all of this and came down the escalator and chose to stay. And that's why I think the analogies of Superman is so apropos. He was willing to walk on the train tracks in front of a train that was going about 120 miles an hour and knew the risk. And the risk being taken out like JFK was. He knew all of that and did it anyway.
Absolutely wild. Well, Colonel, I don't know if you have anything left or anything else that you want to share from that one.
Nope.
Okay, then we'll do this. Let me get into the Rumble rants. I'm going to check something real quick, Colonel. I don't know if you can take up the air because I smell smoke, and I don't know if it's my lights or someone's in the kitchen. I'm going to go full screen with you.
It might be you.
Give me like 20 seconds, Colonel.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read what I wrote as my hypothesis for preparing for this segment. That Trump's proximity to Cohn's network resorts due diligence that he would have been required to do, and being involved in the New York power structures gave him operational knowledge of how banks work, how offshore vehicles work, how intelligence cutouts work, how the laundering of money and their pipelines functioned, and that he is now using all of the legal tools, whether they're sanctions, designations of terrorist organizations, enforcement, energy market pressures, to dismantle each element of that system. That this hypothesis fits a coherent pattern of associations and policy choices. And I think it does. And I think his career and the immersion that he had in all of this basically negates any attempt to say that he's one of them, because he certainly is not. There's not any of his career that mirrors the people that work on the inside. He did not go to one of the elite prep schools. He did not go to one of their elite schools. He did not join one of their secret societies. He did not join any of the known entities that plan all of these nefarious things, like the CFR, the Bilderberg Group, Pilgrims, any of those. He wasn't associated with any of them. And so I think if you start with the hypothesis of whether was he involved in it, I think on every level we have checked off he was not part of the status quo. He operated adjacent to it, but definitely on the outside of it.
I would agree completely with that. And the house is not burning down, but I think I did lose one of my lamps. Maybe that's why I was so hot like a chicken nugget. Maybe there was something wrong with it. But nonetheless, I don't want nobody to worry. I'll be okay. Just probably going to be ordering another lamp. But no, Colonel, I agree with that. And I didn't get to hear the entire part that you shared with the audience, but just catching the tail end of that, I get the direction you're coming from, and I agree. And again, whether you think that Trump's been involved with this counter operation for decades, or you think that it just happened in, from 2015 to now, nonetheless, it's at least clear to me that there's a counterinsurgency in play 100%. And I wish I knew who it was in the chat But someone had said, are you and Colonel, how do you guys feel about a CIA director being quiet? And you guys know the Colonel's position when it comes to the CIA, and I about 99% agree with her. But this is what I'll say: if you want to take down the CIA, it's only going to be done from the inside. That's my opinion.
So my documentation of what the CIA has in fact done is crystal clear on how nefarious the CIA is. To your point, I believe what's going on right now is that CIA Director Radcliffe proved himself at the end of Trump's first term when he was the one that insisted that the COVID start was from the Wuhan lab, not a wet market, and that it was released on purpose. And so that was kind of the bookend of that. The fact that he took that man who had the courage to speak up when everyone else wouldn't, and the CIA at the time was feeding him horse shit, Gina Haspel, and saying something completely different, which was in fact another created intelligence bullshit, not real intelligence. When he was assigned to the CIA at the beginning of Trump's second term, my statement was the entire thing is a ball of vipers. But him and a very small cadre of people that he brought with him would now have access to all of the information and, more importantly, the capability to see inside the CIA. And working with DNI Gabbard, he meticulously went through all of the assessments that had been based on made-up intelligence and fixed them and provided real ones to Gabbard that was then declassified, which is how we know as much as we know today. So Radcliffe has more than proven himself not to be one of those on the inside. And I believe the release of the information as it pertains to the investigation, because again, a lot of this stuff is being looked at as part of the grand jury in Fort Pierce. And you cannot get out ahead of your skis when you're actually going through a grand jury and you're hoping for indictments. And I think the most recent declassification, even though it has redactions, it won't have redactions at the grand jury.
Nope.
They will have access to the full unredacted, declassified documents. And what that does for the grand jury, if you guys don't know, when you go through a grand jury, because it's in every one of these books I read, when you go through a grand jury, if the information, and this is how the CIA has gotten out of all of the shit in the first place, if the documents are not declassified, they have to go in special facilities that are set up, and the judge, and only the judge, and not the jury, the grand jury, and the two attorneys look at the information and they come to agreements and look at the documents. And in many cases, the defense attorney will be told that certain information will not be given to him because of national security. So you are basically flying blind as a defense attorney, and the judge is the one that makes that decision. And the judge in every one of these 160 books that I have floating around here has always sided with the government. When they tried Noriega in Miami, they basically kept everything related to the CIA out of the trial. His defense attorney never got to see it. And Noriega was on the CIA payroll for over 10 years. And everything they accused him of doing, he was doing while he was on the CIA's payroll.
And the crazy part of that, just for the audience to understand, because people will probably argue, well, that's the way the system's set up. It's actually not.
No.
The judge at your local and state level, the judge will have your back as an investigator to keep things sealed up until the moment it's time to go to trial. Then the judge says, hey, now they get to see. Now we're into discovery. So, and this is why when you have people working large cases and they're on a wire, this is why you see smaller cases get dropped or dismissed, and people don't understand why. It's because you can't compromise the bigger case that's going on. In this case, you're in the trial, you're in the grand jury indictment, and the judge saying, "Nah, you ain't gonna see it." Like, that's crazy.
Yes. And so even during the trial for Noriega, when they pre-trial decided that the word CIA could never be mentioned in the trial, it prejudiced the entire proceedings, and they convicted him anyway. And you don't even know that until somebody leaks something and you find out that through FOIA or whatever, long after the guy's been in jail for 20 years, that in fact happened, and it happened repeatedly. And so by declassifying this information and them not having to go to SCIFs and all that other stuff, they sped up the process for what's going on in those grand juries tremendously. And Ratcliffe was part of that because he is the declassification authority, although Trump can declassify anything. But Radcliffe, anything that's generated from the CIA, to include all their fake intel, can be declassified by Radcliffe.
Here's the last point that I'll get to, and then we'll get to these rumble rants and super chat with the CIA. I just want to remember people, and I think you would agree with me on this, Colonel. One of the things that really scared us about terrorists and terrorist cells is that even if you took out the head, these cell networks were going to run through with their orders, whatever their mission is. Well, who do you think taught them all that? If you understand that the 99% of the terrorist organizations are something that are a result of the intelligence apparatus, then that means so is their method of operation. And so, and this is why I have the argument that the CIA has to be taken down from within, because it's not truly, just because the building gets demolished and the logos go away, that don't mean the CIA don't exist no more. It just means it doesn't exist in the building, on paper, or in the uniforms and payroll the way we saw it anymore. The only way to eradicate it is you have to have people within it that can identify every black operation that's out there, every dark black contractor that's out there. You have to have a full audit of everything that's off the books. And you can't do that unless it's from the inside.
Yes. And then we burn it down.
And then you burn it down. I agree with you there.
And for Bridget, you bury it under nuclear waste so no one can ever go near it.
100%. Two super chats that are YouTube. I guess I'll just call them super chats. It's the easiest way. You saw it earlier. PsyOp Receipts became a member over there. It's part of the YouTube family. So thank you for that. And then we have Vernon Bird, 7551, 200 joules, jamming. We have that. And then, of course, as always, one of the OGs here, Bread Maker on Rumble, $20 Rumble rant. This one's kind of heartbreaking, though, folks. My beautiful mom died as a result of the vaccine. She died slowly and painfully, and it breaks my heart. She will never have justice. Love you, Colonel, and I thank you for your service. And
God bless you.
God bless you for that. Colonel, I don't think you told the audience yet. Anything you got coming up this week, and where can people find you?
You can find me on Rumble and X Spaces at 4:00 every day, Monday through Friday. And Friday, we do a special with War Hamster Brady, where we're currently talking about the Pilgrim Society. We kind of started at the beginning of it, which was the early 1900s, and are going through all of the notorious people. We talked about Winston Churchill last week, and definitely a Star Pilgrim, and all of the people on both sides of the pond that, in America and in the UK that are part of the Pilgrim Society. And I'm telling you, when I first read about the Pilgrim Society, and basically it was set up to eliminate the barriers between the United States and dissolve our Constitution. much like the Fabians, which we went through the Fabians before the Pilgrims. But the Pilgrims is basically the next level up. It's the diplomatic piece of the Fabian agenda. And it's amazing when you go back and you look at all of the people. We're just kind of chronologically going from its creation, like in 1902 or something like that, all the way through to today on the most notorious pilgrims. And just so that you know, Tucker's dad and Tucker are pilgrims.
If you didn't know, now you know. Very interesting. We had a Rumble rant come in at the very last second. $5 from Larry 5673. He says, I absolutely hope so. But do you really think that the big cases will actually ever come to fruition and happen? It will take lots of time and government officials always changing. I personally believe that the things that need to be brought into fruition will. A lot of stuff that we want probably provide vindication. We may not see because they're going to use that to go over the bigger fish. I think we're going to get enough for public sentiment to be like, okay, but the bigger win is I think we are going to see this nation get brought back to its.
They have hundreds of attorneys down in Fort Pierce right now conducting the grand juries and doing the investigations. So yes, I actually do think things are going to happen and there will be accountability. There has to be, or we don't have a country.
And then me and Colonel got to go into hiding. That's what.
No, I'm not going into hiding, but I got a feeling that there's going to be a lot more things that we'd be doing that we don't want to do.
I'll definitely be moving to Florida because there'll be time for fortifications. That's for sure.
I think you probably will be.
Folks, if you haven't done so already, smash the thumb, hit the heart, share this out. Make sure you go and follow the Colonel. All the links to follow are down in the description on whatever platform you're watching, including the first one, the Gladio store. Go get a challenge coin, get a coffee mug, get a t-shirt, support the people and all the research they do in the back. And right at the very end, ZBM with a $2 one. Heard that from China has won the AI race. What do you think of this? True or not true? Love you guys. Cheers. They have not won the AI race because if they did, we'd all be enslaved already. Catch you guys on the next one. Good night. God bless and Semper Fi.